Hi, third grade. We're on to Unit 7, but before we do that, I want to review what we talked about last week in Unit 6. Remember, Unit 6, we started with the open syllable. Remember, an open syllable is a long vowel sound, and the vowel is not closed in, like, for example, pro, or me, or flu. Now remember, an open syllable can be part of a two-syllable word. In that case, it might look like it's closed in, but if you were to separate that syllable out, it would not. So for example, in the word remote. Re is an open syllable. That's a long E sound. You might say, well, it is closed in by the M, but it's not, because if we pull that syllable out, you'll see it's an open syllable. So remote is an open syllable with a vowel consonant E. Remember, we also talked about how you split words apart, right? So this is remote, but this here, remember what you put on hot dogs, is relish. So this is not relish, it's relish. This is two closed syllables, whereas this is an open syllable with a vowel consonant E. We also talked about the Y as a vowel. The whole reason why we have the Y as a vowel is because of the open syllable. Remember, Y can be in a one-syllable word, and if it is, it sounds like a long I. So for example, in the word pry, if you pry something open or pry into someone's business, try, cry, one syllable. And these are considered open syllables. If a Y is in a multisyllabic word and it comes at the end, that Y is most likely always going to sound like an E. Pray, open syllable. Z, that's considered an open syllable. We also talked about how you have to be careful, because sometimes when you figure out if you double a consonant in the middle of the word, how do you know when to do that? Remember, we talked about the difference between po, ni, two open syllables, long vowel sound, and penny, right? In this case, there's two N's. Why? Because the first N has to close in. I don't say peeny, I say penny. So we talked about that difference between an open syllable at the beginning and a closed syllable at the beginning. And that's why there's only one N in pony, but two N's in penny. Muddy. I don't say muddy, I say muddy. Then we talked about that A is a schwa. If an A comes at the beginning of the word or an end of the word as an open syllable, many, many times it's going to sound like an like in the word about. Alaska, or this very cold place, which is up in the Arctic Circle, tundra. Do you remember all of that? I hope so. Okay, third grade, remember we also talked about the soft C and the soft G. So if a C or G is followed by an E, I, or Y, the C makes a S sound, and the G makes a J sound. So remember, we had words, for example, city, followed by an I, so I don't say kitty, I say city. Cellar, this is like a part of a basement. Sometimes you have cellars underneath like in a basement or maybe under the ground. You don't say Keller, you say cellar or scent, right? This is not the scent like I sent a note with my mom. This is scent like a penny. These are your soft C's and your soft G's would be something like gym. I don't say gym. I say gym. I say gem. Now remember, there are some exceptions to the G. We talked about give, gibbon. There are some exceptions. Gingerbread is one up here, or ginger, or gingerbread. So we talked about soft C and soft G. Do you remember that? So when you are reading, this is very important when you're reading. Because when you come to a word, a multisyllabic word that you're trying to sound out by decoding, I use that prefix, did anyone catch it? You need to remember if it's a C followed by an E, I, or Y, G, J. Then we also talked about the letter I in a multisyllabic word. Again, this is for reading. So if an I is followed by a consonant, it's going to sound like an I, even though it looks like an open syllable. So for example, in the word animal, if I were to split that up, an-if-ma, that's a schwa. It should be an-I-ma, right? Because that's an open syllable. But because it's followed by a consonant, it's a short vowel sound. Think about the word cavity. If you have a cavity in one of your teeth, cav-it-t. It's not cav-I-tie or cav-I-t. It's cav-it-t. If the I is followed by a vowel, it actually sounds like an E. Ray, open syllable. D, open syllable. O, look at that. So crazy that what the I sounds like an E. Patio, pat, closed syllable. E, open syllable. O, open syllable. It's still considered an open syllable even though it sounds like an E. Same thing here. It's still considered an open syllable even though it sounds like an I. So this would be closed syllable, open, open syllable. All from last week. So now we're going to learn, the focus this week is learning a rule when adding a suffix to an open syllable. Okay, so just like we have rules for adding suffixes with a closed syllable with your one-to-one-to-one, and rules for adding suffixes with your vowel, consonant, E syllable, there are also rules for adding suffixes with the open syllable. One of the rules deals with words that end with Y. If you have a multisyllabic word or even a one-syllable word and it ends with a Y, the rule is you change the Y to an I and you add ES. So say for the example, you have the word empty and something else. It does not matter, vowel or consonant suffix. You remember on the vowel, consonant, E and on the one-to-one-to-one, you only double if it's a vowel suffix and you only drop the E if it's a vowel suffix. It doesn't matter, vowel or consonant suffix, you must change the Y to I and add the suffix, except for ing. You don't add I and then ing. All right, so let's look at the word empty. So this is empty, so it's a closed syllable with an open syllable. If I want to say I emptied the trash, I emptied it. So I'm going to add the suffix ed. I must change that y to an I. And then I add ed. Say I want to say the boy empties the trash, right? So that's a vowel suffix, but even if I want to add a consonant suffix, I still change the y to an I. Empty. Now, if I want to say we are emptying the trash, that's the only time you keep the y. Because we're not going to write emptying. We're not going to do that. That makes no sense. That's the only time you keep that y is when you add ing. All of the other times you change the y to an I and you add es. So that's a 2-syllable word, but it works even for a 1-syllable word. So say for the example, you have try, right? If you want to say, I'm trying to improve my grades for this quarter, if we add ing, then you keep that y, E-R-Y-I-N-G. But if we want to say he tried to improve his grades, and I'm going to add try plus that ed, I must change the y to an I and add ed. Tried, tries. The second rule we're going to learn is when you have a word ending with an O. Like, for example, in the word potato. If the word ends with O, you automatically, and you want to make it plural, you add ES instead of S. So you know that other words, like if it ends with a CH or an X or an SH or an S, we always add ES. Well, this is another letter. If it ends with an O, you add ES. Okay, let that sink in. That is our focus. Changing Y to I and adding the suffix. Unless you're adding ing, then you keep the Y. If a word ends with O, vol, cane, O, vol, cane, O, you add ES. Good job, third grade.